I haven't really talked about this with anyone in podcasts before.
Enlightened, still human. I don't care whichever
Definitely,
definition we
we're still human.
use as right, still human.
People portray you because of certain like realizations as insight that you upload to the internet. They will immediately
Hmm.
put you on a pedestal and then portray you a certain way.
Maybe I told you in the past life, Frank,
Maybe,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we just basically picked up where we left off.
Yeah. Really relate to everything you were saying in your book as well when you kind of realize how selfish you were. And I had many, many moments like that. No, I burned some bridges, during this process because when you clean up your own mess, people around you are also going to feel the effect of that.
Frank Yang doesn't get upset, or Frank Yang doesn't get annoyed with a comment.
I'm actually part of my training right now is to feel frustrated, is to feel sad, is to fear the fear of other people. When I just realized, holy shit, I'm actually kind of working a 9 to 5 job and I fucking love it. We kind of did a lot of shit talking. Sometimes when I talk to people who are on this path, and they would even justify the fact that, oh, I'm not punctual. I didn't show up on time because there is no time.
Oh my God, this is such a, it drives me nuts when I hear things
Yeah,
like
it
this,
does. Yeah,
because it's
actually, I
like,
agree with you.
because I can immediately see how the mind just hijacks an insight or a
No,
piece of
yeah,
information,
totally,
right? To
totally.
use it as an
Yeah,
excuse,
yeah,
to
that's
like,
something that
for
we
all the
could talk
fuck
about too.
ups.
Yeah, yeah.
But today's been a really weird day. Like anything that I've started doing or working on that normally goes smoothly, it was just like not working, you know? And yeah, so nothing surprises me anymore today.
When you just said that, I don't know if this is like somehow related, but my mentor actually told me like one of my karmas is like I tend to like distort the field, like kind of like a Tasmanian devil. And then when I spent some time with my mentor, he was observing that around me. It's like, oh, wherever Frank goes, that kind of karma would just kind of be entangled with other people. And then usually people who are very punctual and very like precise in these kind of things, when I'm around, like somehow they would just kind of become kind of like, oh, what the, I can't believe I forgot to pick up Frank at the airport. That never happened to me before. But that's the karma that
So,
I'm actually working on right now. Is that's what I said in the beginning. I'm trying to be more punctual, trying to be more
yeah,
professional because when I'm hosting these like meditation boot camps that I've been kind of talking about, it does take like a significant amount of like punctuation, precision,
yeah,
and professionalism because now I'm working with the whole team, and it's something new for
yeah.
me actually.
I listened to a conversation that you had, I think it was a while ago. I don't ask me when, but um, you were talking about a book that you were reading. I think it was Luminous Heart. I'm not 100%
Oh,
sure.
luminous heart. Yes, yes. That's actually tying back to what you were saying earlier about the bootcamp is actually one of our programs within the bootcamp is to have scholarly studies. And
Mm-hmm.
Luminous Heart is one of the books that we're focusing on right now. And another one is In Praise of Dharma Dhatu. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
About using luminous heart as an example of developing a kind of a yogic intelligence or yogic
Mm-hmm.
capacity that has to be coupled with really dialectical studies like
Mm-hmm.
Nugajuna, like
Mm-hmm.
the third Kamaba, how like that is inseparable from sitting meditation or inquiry, which a lot of people don't really have an idea about because they would just throw away concepts immediately. Be like, oh, concept is bad. But then you actually have a view there that you're not
Yeah.
seeing, which is concepts are bad. But then you're still kind of creating that duality between like concepts and reality and how the
Yeah.
importance of developing a kind of a dialectical intelligence that is a necessity for further refinement of views.
During that conversation on that particular podcast, I asked you, "Are you enlightened?" Okay. And I thought this was such a brilliant opportunity to explore this. And I kind of wanted them to like go with you there and explore as to why even that question makes no sense. anymore. Can you talk about, how that looks so different from different perspectives anyway?
Yeah. But if you look at the Dzogchen perspective, for them, there's only one shift, which is the shift
Mm-hmm.
to Buddhahood. And then it's
Okay.
either you are in a Buddhahood position or you're not. Have you attained
Mm-hmm.
Buddhahood? Yes or no? But that's from the Dzogchen perspective, or
Yeah.
from maybe the Vajrayana as well. But from the four path model of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is what most people associate with Buddhism, Shakyamuni's fourth path model, you can say to be liberated at the uh, entry to the fourth path,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then for the fourth model, if you can look at it from the perspective of the fetters model, is when you drop all 10 fetters. But if you look at another map, which is Dana Ingram's map, which is the map that I talk a lot about in my previous videos about how Dana Ingram modernizes the traditional four path model and then trying to fit into the modern convention. And for
Mm-hmm.
him, if you have a realization, I guess you can see this is the where the tricky part is because I wanted to say the fourth path model, according to Danny Ingram, the fourth path is anatta realization. Yeah, which is seeing through the self completely and
Yeah.
kind of dissolving or letting go or untying the knots of perception in the center. So you become
Yep.
permanently centerless. For Daniel
Yeah.
Ingram, that is enlightenment. But then he doesn't take into consideration the emotional aspects of realization that much. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, from Daniel Ingram's perspective, the fourth part model, his arahaship would not fly in the traditional sense of arahaship or enlightenment, where you
Mm-hmm.
have to be completely purified, even emotionally. Yeah, and there
Yeah.
is a point to that because if you try to copy and paste the models that were popularized in a very specific context, historical context,
Mm-hmm.
say thousands of years ago, when that particular model was very beneficial for monks or people who have the monastic lifestyle, and you try to apply it, copy and paste that to the modern mind, it just wouldn't work. Actually, it could be harmful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand this modernization of a lot of the dharmas nowadays in pragmatic dharma circle, and even the 10 fetters model. There is a more modernized version popularized by
Mm-hmm.
Panilla. Do you know Panilla from Awakening Curriculum? Yeah, it's a
I've
more
heard of
modernized version of
awakening
the 10
curriculum.
fetters model. Yeah.
Is this connected to Jeffrey Martin in any way, or
Uh,
this is two
no,
separate people?
it's two separate people. But Jeffrey Martin is another example of someone who tries to modernize awakening and then try to
Mm-hmm.
apply it to our modern convention or our modern condition, which, there is a pros and cons to that, right? It's a double-edged sword because I do
Yeah.
think a lot of the times the modern Dharma circle, especially the internet circle, they don't have the complete, what is that word? Pedagogy in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like, oh, if you want to follow the Theravada map, then you have to go through the whole process. You can't just kind of like pick and choose a very specific phase or a very specific uh, insight and then be like, okay, I'm just going to lose the center. But then emotionally, I can still get triggered. What does that mean? You kind of like pick
Yeah.
and choose a which portion of a tradition that you want to copy and paste to your own path, which again, it's a double-edged sword. It could work to some certain extent, but it could be harmful. So that's
Yeah.
just give you an idea of like the sort of the nuance of exactly what enlightenment means according to different traditions, and you have to take into consideration the different contextual elements, historical elements in which the definition of enlightenment or arhatship or awakening entails. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a crazy ride, to be honest,
Yeah.
because my journey unfolded without any frame of reference.
Hmm.
So basically, I'm still in many ways kind of taking my experience and listening to other people when they use different terminology, and
Hmm.
then seeing, oh, okay, so when I had that experience, that's what they call emptiness. When I had
Right.
nothingness experience or something,
Yeah.
that's what they mean. Or but it can get I also noticed that to my
It can
mind
get
it
very
gets more,
convoluted. Yeah.
it gets so
Yeah.
confusing because sometimes when people talk about no self-realization, I mean something, for me the realization goes beyond self or no self, so it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
or
Yes. Yes.
even the dimensions, the illusory, for me the distinction between what's illusory and real collapsed. So
Yeah.
do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
it's just, it's the same, it's sort of the same thing. So that when people talk about oneness or unity, I also am not sure
Yeah.
what is it that they mean by that, because I
Exactly. Yeah.
can't
What do we even
relate
mean
to
by
it.
enlightenment? Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do we
What do we
even
even
mean
mean
by
by absorption?
enlightenment? By
Yeah. Yeah.
absorption, and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny that the more I actually learn and see how that fits in with my experiences, sometimes just purely out of curiosity, and I love learning about traditions,
Hmm.
is just people get surprised, because I've never practiced anything. I never meditated in my life. I never followed any tradition or practice. And yet I am totally curious and open to exploring these things and learning what other people learn, and what do they talk about, is there more according to them, or does it stay here, it's just stuff like that. It's just for the pure joy of learning and exploring this stuff. But the more I learn, the more I'm confused. It's like, what the hell, this is like so much more simpler, it like in the actual experience. And so it's kind
Hmm.
of funny, which makes me think, people, how this is like after realization, how confusing this must be for people before the realizations, like what's what, who is telling you the
Yeah. Yeah.
truth, those ideas about which path is the only correct path, the ultimate path. And people are like, so who do I follow? This teacher says this, and the other teacher is literally
Hmm.
contradicting what this one teacher would say.
Hmm.
So actually, what would you say to people who are having a bit of a mind fuck, to be honest, because of the variety of so many different perspectives and traditions, and they're like, they don't know which way to go, sort of.
Yeah. First of all, I would just warn people that the internet is probably not the best place to receive some of these teachings
Mm-hmm.
because it's so scattered. Like exactly like what you said, it's so scattered.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, we have the a wealth of information at the tip of our fingers, right? Yet,
Mm-hmm.
you take what this teacher says and you try to, compare to what that teacher say without the context, you can be very confused. And there are consequences for that as well, because
Mm-hmm.
you can actually, run into trouble and become psychopathic or even have suicidal ideations if you don't have the right view and if you don't have practices that are aligned with the right view, for example. Yeah, because what
Mm-hmm.
the mind does is the mind tends to verify things, right? And a lot of people will ask, what do you mean by verification? Verification just means to substantialize things, to pin something down and say, this is the ultimate. And then we see that in throughout people's journeys, and my own journey included. It's like you will have a state or you will have an insight even, and then you will pin it down as the ultimate, and you'll verify that. And you can actually verify even emptiness itself, and then that is one of the most dangerous form of verification is reifying realization itself, reifying no self, for example, making no self into a thing.
It do
But
I
like you
think,
said,
yeah.
no self absolutely, well, you can say realization absolutely transcends both the self and the no self, transcends the
Mm-hmm.
unconditioned and the conditioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because emptiness is a non-affirmative negation. It's what gets revealed when you strip away or seen through all the obscurations and afflictions that are in the way of
Mm-hmm.
what's always and already the case, right? But then the mind just tends to cling on to an extreme view, right? Including the
Yeah.
view of, oh, no self. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't really know what my advice is because, in a sense, kind of like if you don't see through your own view. It doesn't really matter what practices that you follow because you're just going to be reinforcing that view. And then it's really difficult to see through your own view because you are that view, right? When I say view, it's not just a belief, actually. The beliefs are
Mm-hmm.
included. It's not just concepts and ideas. It's actually the geometry of your entire mind and reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's how your mind aggregates through like form, through feelings, to perceptions, to consciousness, to fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
All this different, that's just a model too. Ultimately, all the aggregates are empty, but a view is a lot more, shall we say, fundamental, consequential than what
Mm-hmm.
most people think. Because, for example, most people associate the state of no thought as having no views, but actually, views operate at the preconceptual and pre-verbal level. So if you have no
Totally.
thoughts, yeah, there is the view there that might still be driving your, emotional and
Behaviors.
behaviors and habitual tendencies and your thought patterns, and then you can easily verify the state of no thought or this even the experience of no self as being, oh, I don't have a view, but then you can actually be verifying the state of no thoughts to be the ultimate
Mm-hmm.
or even equanimity. That's why I think in your book you mentioned that yeah, by the way, I really love your book. I haven't finished reading it yet. I'm
Thank
halfway through it,
you.
but I really enjoy it. Yeah, yeah, the degree of like honesty and simplicity. And then when you said that you came across a teacher that, or you came across a bunch of teachers on YouTube that you wondering how they are, in their relationships and how they are off the, camera when they're not teaching, they're not playing that role of the teacher when they're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
being. I do have heard like rumors about certain teachers that
Mm-hmm.
they appear very peaceful, like in their videos during their dharma talks when they host retreats, but apparently off the camera they're very angry because again
Mm-hmm.
we verify this realization thing to be this or that way, right? You have to be peaceful. You cannot feel negative emotions, but then we have to really question that, right?
Yeah,
Like, what is that?
I'll tell you,
Like,
Frank, it baffles me. It totally baffles me. I mean, for one, when I hear, and I don't know if you got to that point in the book, maybe not, but I talk about the fact that like the more human the teacher, the more they actually expose their humanness, okay?
hmm
And talk about their struggles and talk about their
yeah,
emotional breakdown or some kind of psychosis that they went through, or maybe they had some infidelities or something like that, but not in the
that's
like
beautiful.
not as
Hmm
like gossiping, but it's just like because I suppose because the way I see it, now it's like enlightened, still human. I don't care whichever
Definitely,
definition we
we're still human.
use as right, still human,
Mhm. Yeah, still
still
human. Yeah.
human. And the when I went plunged into the dark night and saw the depths of my own bullshit, and
hmm
the depths of like unconscious and how much stuff I'm not even aware unless someone maybe points it out, or that sort of thing. To this day, I might not be aware that there's
Same.
something going
Yeah.
on until
Blind
someone
spots.
points
Yeah.
it out. So there's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
right? So I mean,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful because it's like it immediately, I truly believe that when the teacher shows their most true, basically authentic selves, they
hmm
immediately, just by doing that, they're sort of closing the gap, that seeming gap between this enlightened teacher and the
Yeah.
non-enlightened student that is somewhere sitting
Yeah.
there below. Like immediately, just by virtue of that, this is done. And to
Mhm.
me, like my heart rejoices when I see like the
Yeah.
honesty, when it's
Yeah,
just.
yeah, I think that's beautiful. Yeah, that's why I think a lot of the times, like even you said in your book, and then I had experiences like that too, where people portray you because of certain like realizations as insight that you upload to the internet. They will
Mm-hmm,
immediately, put you on a pedestal and then portray you a certain way. But then you, because of the process of self and others core rising, even if you are aware of it, it's very easy to conform to other people's expectation of you just by the nature of dependent origination, for example. And then
mm-hmm.
you could easily suppress some of your more human aspects
Yeah,
and instincts. Right, right.
yeah.
Um, And now this kind of ties back into the question you're asking, what should people do, right? I
Mm-hmm.
I think I think I'm just there are many things that people can troubleshoot or like problem solve or like see your own blind spot, but I think one of the most important thing is to work with a group or with a teacher. I think that's pretty important. It all depends, right? It depends on where you want to take this realization thing. Like I think that there is
Yeah.
a yeah, I do think there is a degree of realization, even though one can say there is just one realization, which I don't disagree with. But even that one realization has degrees of subtlety. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and because Shi Yang said that enlightenment is like a multifaceted jewel. You can look at this jewel from so many different angles. Yeah, and I do think having people pointed, trustworthy people pointing out some of these views that you're not seeing your blind spots can really be beneficial. That would be my most direct advice. But I'm speaking from an experience in the sense that I didn't have a teacher until the last couple of years. Yeah, I had an another realization, or even there are some shifts that came even after that without a teacher. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would even venture to say that I got pretty lucky that I didn't die or go insane. I did, go insane actually. Well,
Yes.
it's part of the process,
Yes.
right? It is about losing
Yeah,
your mind.
it
But then
is. Yeah,
I just got
totally.
lucky that nothing major happened to me and the people around me, which, I burned some bridges, during this process because when you clean up your own mess, people around you are also going to feel the effect of that because it's not pretty to clean up, like just really reclaim aspects of yourself that you don't want to see. And then you do leave a trail behind in the process of awakening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it is a shattering. It really is, and I think you're absolutely right about that. It really depends what someone is looking for, because
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so many people are basically looking, just they just don't want to suffer, or they just
Yeah.
don't want to suffer less. In which
Yeah.
case, there's lots that can help with that.
Mhm.
Different practices and things like that. But I told you that I oh no, did I tell you? No, I couldn't have told you. So maybe I wrote it in a book that one of the most devastating. Maybe I told you in the past life, Frank,
Maybe.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
I just we just basically picked up where we left off.
Yeah.
Oh, I told you last week over a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Time is not what it seems.
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious. But I remember, the impact, because again, I was ages after my first awakening, and I was suffering more than ever at this point. And so I was like, what the hell is going on with me? Because I couldn't find any like conscious thought or story or anything that I could say was causing my suffering or something. So that was even more confusing. And I remember around that point, came across this book by Jed McKenna,
Oh, I love
Enlightenment,
Jim McKenna actually. Hmm.
and it really did something for me. It did something to me because I felt the energy of him just shattering all the BS about spirituality, including awakening,
Yeah.
in such a ruthless way. Like, he didn't care. He was just like, this is bullshit, this is bullshit. If you're and I
Hmm.
will never forget him saying, if anyone really knew what getting enlightened, so to speak, really entails, no one would ever consciously go for, like, choose this
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
go
yeah,
for it.
don't disagree at all. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Sometimes people look at my videos and how I am now compared to before, and they, yeah, and then I would be like, if you really want this, it's not as pretty as you think because like actually wait, sorry, I was speaking to people who've only seen my recent videos where I'm pretty much
Mm-hmm.
unconditionally happy like most of the time, if not all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then they haven't seen my older videos where I would cry on cameras. I used to be bipolar,
Mm-hmm.
and I would get angry to the point where I was just smash and shatter like glasses and like furniture, kicking holes in the wall and things like that, and
Yeah.
suicidal. I actually attempted suicides and all the stuff, and I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, in order to exhaust that, it takes so much exertion, and as much as letting go, there's a lot of exertion that goes into that. Yeah, and I could really relate to everything you were saying in your book as well, when you kind of realize how selfish you were, and I had many moments like that where I realized I was the biggest asshole that I've ever met in my whole life, and then everything I've ever done was for myself, just to be able
Yep.
to not just face that, but be honest about it, but then to own up to it. It's something
Totally.
that it's very emotionally and physically draining, actually. Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes a lot to really, it takes a lot of exertion to exhaust your karmas. And the process is actually still going on, actually. It's just at
Mm-hmm.
a very subtle level now, where tying back to what I was saying, I was lucky that I was able to get to a certain point of my path without a teacher, without
Yeah.
like actually well, I guess you can say clinically going insane, where I had to be hospitalized, which I actually did get hospitalized a couple of times, but it wasn't a long-term thing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
uh, and I think going back to what you were saying earlier about, there's 2 points I want to make. One is the one about Jet McKenna is like I did love Jet McKenna, but I also see the limits of his teachings too, because people can become very nihilistic when it comes
Yes.
to
Totally.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, they would just kind of verify the process of everything's bullshit, or that even the process of what I said earlier about self-invalidation, because you have to self-invalidate even the process of self-invalidation, and then people can you know become nihilistic in the sense that they don't see that they're holding on to the view of nihilism, for example. And then for the people that are clinging on to the idea of nihilism and making that into a view or a belief that then they identify with, and I'm like, maybe you're not nihilistic enough because you haven't seen through the fact that you're making a meaning out of nihilism or out of
Yes.
the state of like maybe depression, for example, because there are because like I said, views are consequential, right? So there are some teachers out there, or maybe I guess is more fitting to call them dharma communicators or
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers who actually make a thing out of the state of emptiness as being something that's very bleak, like having no emotions, or
Yeah.
even nothing has a meaning, because this is what emptiness is, right? And that could be very misleading for people, because I've heard rumors where people that were following that particular person are actually all very depressed, and they kind of justify their state of nihilism or this bleakness view of reality to an insight. Which if you truly have that insight, you will even let go of the whole idea that awakening should be bleak, or that it's almost like making a personality out of just nothing matters and everything is empty. But then you verify emptiness that way, right? There's different ways you can verify emptiness, but one of the most detrimental ways to verify emptiness is actually justifying uh, almost a kind of pathology, and then putting it
Yep.
onto realization. Yeah, yeah.
100%.
I
I'm
see that
100%
happen a
with you.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so with Jed McKenna, I so love how, like, even in the journey, like the certain books just came just at the right time. So
Yeah,
like
the right
his
time.
book, right? So his book was great in the sense that I was already on this kind of the flipping edge, so to speak.
Yeah,
And so I felt like his book kind of pushed me uh like if unknowingly, now I can only see that in retrospect, because I remember it stirred something massively in me,
mm, yeah,
and I remember, and I say this in the book, that like I was reading his book, and because one of the other things he was saying was that if you don't plunge into like the underworld and see the shadow and work through your own bullshit, then that's like it's, and he like called it something like emotional carnage or something like that, and
hmm,
that people would never buy into this, that like if you are not willing to do this kind of thing, then
yeah,
just stay where you are, go to a nice retreat, sit down, have some yoga and whatever, yoga
yeah.
and yogurt, for example, frozen
Yeah, he's
yogurt.
very good at
And so
destroying or deconstructing the spiritual identity. Yeah,
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 exactly. So
yeah,
in that
yeah.
sense, I think he's absolutely he masterfully does that.
Integrity.
However, I agree that he he's in the view, you know, but I can only see
Yeah.
that now afterwards. But it was
Yeah.
so hilarious that,
Hmm, hmm.
you know, I read his book and he talked about all this carnage, psychological, emotional carnage, and like these dark nights and everything. And I'm like, I think he's exaggerating a little bit. Literally
A
two
little bit.
weeks later, I'm in it, you know, and
It's
like,
he's very dramatic, and
oh,
that's what makes him effective and entertaining, right? I think every teacher has a place in someone's journey. So, like,
yes,
even with some of this criticism that I was voicing, I'm grateful for every Dharma teacher or communicators that I came across.
yep,
But then all
yep,
these teachings actually comes with a warning sign too. It's like it's completely contextual. Yeah, even the teaching
yeah.
of emptiness is contextual as well, because, like you said, it goes beyond self and no self. And when somebody asked the Shakyamuni Buddha, "Is there a self?" and he didn't even reply because he realizes is both and neither. And when
Mm-hmm,
somebody asked
mm-hmm.
him, "Are you a god or a human?" and he said, "Neither. I'm awake." Right. So I totally agree with what you said about, just showcasing your human flaws. Yeah, yeah. But then the people who might take that and then turn that into a view too. I guess the
Totally.
example yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah,
okay, now I'm just gonna show off all my human flaws, and then they're like, it's
yeah, yeah,
okay that
yeah.
I act unvirtuously because that's my human flaw, and that showcases my level of honesty, like virtue testing or
Mm-hmm,
something like that. Now, just an example
mm-hmm.
of how everything could be turned into an identity or a view. Yeah.
Yeah,
But then at the same
yeah,
time, every teaching, every teacher has a place
yeah.
in someone's journey at a particular time. Just like when I said, even the Theravada Buddhist kind of approach can be limited, right? But
Mm-hmm,
then that was perfect for the historical context of a monastic lifestyle in Shakyamuni's time. But then we live in a very different context right now.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, yeah, we
mm-hmm.
can sort of tease out some of the benefits of these teaching, and then apply it to our own modern convention. But that's not as easy as it sounds. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm sure. I mean, there must be such challenges because, you know, when I look even at the evolution of language and interpretation, you know, the interpretation is actually influenced by the cultures and
yeah,
societies of the time, you know. So
yeah,
this
yeah.
is why, you know, for me, from the very early age, Frank, like I was telling someone recently that I was in the church, Catholic church, listening to sermons as a kid, and I knew that I was listening to dogma. And I knew that
Mm.
there was like universal truth with capital T that I couldn't grasp, but knew was there, that all these major religions were pointing to. But the religion institution would co-opt it and turn it into like a
Yeah,
controlling
exactly what these
mechanism.
teachers say not to do. Exactly what Jesus and Buddha say not to do. People do it. Yeah, because that's just the
Exactly.
nature of the
Exactly.
dualistic mind. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dualistic mind.
You know, one of the greatest byproducts of this realization was like the freedom from the known, you know, in a
Yeah.
sense that like you explore, you learn, but like without the need to arrive to some kind of ultimate
Conclusion.
conclusion,
Yeah, even
right?
truth is to be self-invalidated, but it's a continuous process of self-invalidation. It evolves, right? Because that's what reality is. Reality is constantly shape-shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and language is also very tricky because it's like a again, it's a double-edged sword because it's almost like the only way we could see is through language. Well, of course, you can go beyond language, but for the conventional mind, that's the only way we can communicate and we can interpret the world is through language. So
Mm-hmm.
language gives you a lot of freedom, right, for expression, for understanding, but at the same time, it
Yep.
traps you into that particular framework of, linguistic representation. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you're sitting inside a cave and the only window you have is language. But then without language, you can't see what's, behind these
Beyond,
walls.
behind, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
beyond. But then part of this journey, it's also just to transcend concepts and language altogether without annihilating concepts and language. Yeah, yeah, that's the middle way, right? Yeah, middle way is not just the point in between two extremes. Middle way is what transcends both sides of the extreme, so both sides of the duality, but then includes both
Mhm.
sides simultaneously. Yeah, this whole notion of
Yeah.
like sudden path, gradual path, doership, non-doership, self versus no self, or divine versus mundane, right? That is a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. between two extremes, that you have the flexibility now that you transcended them to incorporate them depending on context and function.
Yeah, because I think from I can see how people get confused because when you know that here you have people talk about transcending human, the humanness,
Yeah.
and also remaining human, right? Or transcending
Yeah,
language, but
simultaneously.
but using the language,
Yeah, without being
transcending the
attached to it.
I and being totally the I that was
At the
late
same
for
time.
Frank's
Yeah, yeah,
chat
exactly.
today, like
Even
that sort of thing,
emotions. Yeah, even
right?
emotion when yeah, because some teacher would say the progress is measured by emotional bleakness, for example, and then these people would try to like trigger people, for example, trigger the student or trigger other
Mm-hmm.
teachers, and then be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you got triggered, therefore you don't have the realization. But then the thing is like it's really about seeing how phenomenons arise, how phenomenons compound and decompound, how things are constantly contracting and expanding, and seeing the lack of inherent existence in both the contraction and the expansion, in both compounded phenomena and decompounded phenomenons, as both lacking any kind of a true essence. That is really the key insight. So if you get triggered and then you can immediately see that, hey, I feel triggered, but at the same time, I see that there is no substantial substance to the trigger, then it's actually okay to feel a certain emotion, even quote unquote negative emotions, without suffering. Yeah, yeah. Because in the later, when we talk about the three wheels of the turn of the Dharma, the Theravada map, some people can really verify that as having like really no emotions, or you can't have any desire, for example. But then the later Buddhism actually takes desire to be the fuel for liberation. Yeah, they gather the sentient resources of desire and turn that into a fuel to go beyond itself, but then includes the desire as well. But then you can actually have desire without craving, desire without grasping. When desire is just non-dual, you can have a
100%.
desire without the subject object split between the object of desire and the subject of desire. But even when you have that split, just like even when you get triggered, it's actually with the right training and with the amount of the insight that you had, can actually be okay with the split as well, because you see that the split phenomenon is also empty of inherent existence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get freedom
Yeah.
to
I
feel all
yeah.
kinds of emotions. Yeah. Yeah.
I learned about these things, like the desire thing and the suffering, and I've learned through conversations that because when I talk about the end of suffering, I don't mean the end of negative emotions. For me, the end of suffering was actually when the sort of attempts to end the suffering ceased. And so it was
Hmm.
almost like so it's the not having the resistance to the
Right.
so-called
To
negative
even
emotions,
resistance. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
That ended the suffering.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
It,
can,
yeah.
when I have my emotional release, for example, during some breath work or something, I can like sob, and it's so like,
It's blissful even.
it can
You
be
could
even
even
blissful,
yeah.
and it's such a to me it's maybe less blissful, but more like it's such a hard like a sort of hard pouring, hard opening kind of an experience, and it's so allowed that to even say it's allowed doesn't make sense, because it's like, well, it's either allowed or not allowed, it's just
Yeah.
what's
Even that's a
happening, it's a
duality. Yeah.
happening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
like there's no, at least in my experience, there's no like this mechanism anymore where I could say I'm leaning in or I'm not leaning in.
Mm.
It's just everything is just a happening. So if the happening is a powerful emotional release, that may be
Then it is what it is.
massive sadness or grief or something like that, it's just there, it just fills the
Mm-hmm.
whole infinite it's like there's no edges to it, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
all there is in that moment. And I suppose that because it is allowed to be and there's
Yeah.
no trying to push it down or non-dualizing it away
Non-dualizing. That's so. I love that term.
or right, that sort of thing, it's that's why there's no suffering. But if you
Yeah.
look at me in that moment of grief or sadness, you will think that I'm suffering, but
Yes.
I'm not,
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you, is this a topic of these emotions? Because I honestly don't know where this idea even came from. It doesn't make sense to me, this idea that
Having no
enlightenment is
desire, no emotions. Yeah.
emotionless.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that. That actually, a lot of that view comes from the misrepresentation of certain traditions, actually, because they're not understanding the context in which, just like I said earlier, the context in which these teachings are derived from, right? Because in the
Mm-hmm.
you can get into a state of no emotions very easy. Well, I don't want to say very easily, but easier and surface
Mm-hmm.
function in the monastic life, right? But then if you take that teaching and try to copy and paste into the modern world, it just doesn't always work, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe some people, again, depends on what you want, right? Some people just don't want to feel emotion. That's totally fine too. But do you recognize that is the view that you're holding? If you recognize it,
Yeah.
then in a sense, it's not a view anymore. People can, like I said, realization has so many different facets. Do you want to be in a state where you don't feel negative or positive emotions? Some people might find that state to be preferable, which
Yeah.
is a trainable skill actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I've went through phases where I absolutely just don't feel any emotions.
Yep.
Yeah, but then I also see the limitation of that because now,
Mm-hmm.
like that, as I said, I'm co-hosting this bootcamp where I actually have to feel emotion. That's actually one of the things that I'm working on right now is to sort of aggregate as other people in order to feel other people's emotions for me
Mm-hmm.
to refine my skills in working with other sentient beings. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say people mistaken the remedy for truth a lot of the times because the state of having no emotions or even the skill of just become completely immovable, that
Mm-hmm.
is a remedy to cure your previous sort of afflictions or attachments to emotion. For example, if you're just completely in your own emotion, then there could be a phase where you see through that and then you abide in a state where you don't feel emotions most of the time, or when you have a state of no thoughts, for example. That's a
Mm-hmm.
remedy as a cure to, I guess, to be applied to when we're always proliferating, which is the condition of the modern mind, right? We're always proliferating. But the moment you take the remedy to be the ultimate, and then it sort of loses its meaning in a sense,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, because then that's just a new view that you're holding. Because from the perspective of a clean shirt, both the detergent and the stains are obscurations. Because so if you're holding on
Yeah.
to the remedy as like the ultimate, then that becomes the stain. So the remedy almost loses its meaning. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But do you see how, like, I feel for people who are on this journey, who get so confused because if they,
Hmm.
how much suppression there must be going on
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
name of a particular view,
Yeah.
you
View. Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, and because it's not just about it's not even just about emotions. There's like, it seems to me now that I've been like in spaces and seeing like what people are sort of up to,
Hmm.
that there's a whole like non-dual persona, or there is a whole
Yeah.
awakened persona, or
Yeah.
that acts a certain way and
Yeah.
speaks a
Exactly.
certain way.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just so, there's no aliveness there, there's just,
Yeah.
it's like, and it's so, I find it heartbreaking because when people then use it as like a measure or a frame of
Yeah.
reference
Exactly.
as to
That was exactly
what
the example that I used.
non-duality,
Yeah.
right?
If you feel emotion, then you're not enlightened.
And the criteria used to judge somebody else's enlightenment. So like if you went to the gym and work out, you couldn't possibly be enlightened because that's like vanity, because you like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I've
you would
gotten that so
be,
many times too.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
my God, you would
Yeah.
be literally
Yeah.
like definitely up there with like non-enlightened criteria list, because
Mhm.
you're working out too much or whatever, you know, just such charging for your time supporting, guiding people, charging too much, wearing
Mhm.
makeup, being too loud. I was literally
Yeah.
sitting thinking, oh my God, what is happening here?
And
And
that's what I
it's
said.
like,
The internet is probably not the best place to receive teachings, actually. Yeah. Again, that's what I said. It's a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. It's
yeah,
like I wouldn't be where I am today without the internet.
yeah,
Right. But at the same time, there are just so many different traps right out there because information are so scattered.
Yeah, I can't tell you how baffling that was to me. How,
I can totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah, and I
you
can relate to.
know, 'cause at first I noticed that like the traditionalists were very dogmatic and they were sort of often bashing other teachings, especially if there were more modern takes and, things like that. But then the more
Yeah.
modern people were bashing the
Fashion and
traditions.
tradition, exactly. Yeah,
And it's like, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're no different,
exactly.
you're just as
Yeah,
dogmatic.
exactly.
So I found myself in a very funny place because as a person who never had a practice and never followed any tradition, I found myself defending traditions and practices because I
Right.
was like,
That's
no,
beautiful.
this
Yeah.
works for people,
Yeah, it is.
there are
Yeah,
people,
exactly. Yeah.
that's their
Yeah. Yeah. People
path.
can really also get really hung up on the idea of like no practice, no traditions, like the path. They verify the pathless path. Yeah. And another thing about the internet, exactly what you mentioned, is like every community or every teacher or every Dharma communicator can really easily create an echo chamber within their own community, and then just
Mm-hmm.
kind of reinforcing that view through their audience or through their students. And then another uh, YouTube Dharma communicator would have its own echo chamber. And over time, this echo chamber, just again, like I said, through the process of dependent origination or the process of codependent rising, gets thicker and thicker and thicker. It almost becomes like this concavity that we don't even
Mm-hmm.
see. Yeah, yeah. So
um
it's like a collective view. It's like a view that a teacher had that maybe he doesn't see, and then his students or his viewers will reinforce that. And then another teacher would have their own view, and then when these two views come in contact with each other, when they both not seeing their own limitation, can actually thicken both views and then reaffirming their views and the
yeah,
students' views, for example. Which, like I said, all views are completely fine, right? Just like you said, the self is completely fine. It's like we cannot function without a self. But
mm-hmm.
then, do you have the flexibility, or like I said, do you have the fitness? That's why we've in the bootcamp have been calling this realization fitness. Yeah, do you have the capacity to flexibly aggregate from one view to another without friction? Yeah, that's the beauty
Yeah,
of life, this being this constant shapeshifter. But then there's a danger in redifying shapeshifting too. That's just how the tricky the mind is. It's like, okay, I'm just
mm-hmm.
always shapeshifting, and then that could be a problem too if you maybe in a certain phase of your life you need to be like
Yeah,
that could serve a function, right? You like just like everything is flow, everything I'm just going with the flow, everything's spontaneous. That could be a trap too because they could be just reinforcing your own conditionings.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people go around saying it's all just flow, right? But then what are you gonna do? What do you think would happen if you just go with the flow all the time without really seeing the limitation of that view? Is that you're gonna be reinforcing some of your addictions, for example, because it's all flow
mm-hmm.
anyway, right? Or some of your
Mm-hmm.
habitual tendencies. You can easily just reinforce that. Yeah, just like
Yeah,
the how I said earlier, you can um, over self-invalidate. You can over
yeah,
shapeshift when in fact maybe this particular phase of your life you need to be wear a tie, you need to wear a suit, and you need to just get a 9 to 5 job.
exactly.
That's legit for a certain part of your path for the
Yeah.
development, right?
And
Yeah,
maybe, actually, a part of your path is to literally drop the whole seeking thing and spirituality and actually do get a job, you know what I mean? And
exactly,
get you,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
right? Like get your
yeah.
health
That
in
that's
order, go
beautiful.
to the
Yeah,
gym, drink
get to the
water,
gym. Yeah,
eat
yeah,
a
yeah,
healthy
yeah. The most
sandwich
basic things.
or
Yeah,
something. It's really the basics because like, I mean, honestly, I think what I'm trying to say is that I think we both love the idea that there's just so many different paths and different people and different
it's what makes it interesting, but it's
situations.
also equally
Yes,
baffling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's contextual. It's really contextual because one person may absolutely need to close down in some kind of with monks, somewhere up in the mountain and meditate for
That could be
hours or
useful.
something like that.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
could be literally the thing that they need. But maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow they will need to see the therapist to deal with
Hmm.
childhood trauma that is like coming up to the surface. More unconscious material is
Yeah,
often
yeah,
only
yeah.
coming up to the surface because because I think, I don't know if you agree, there's like the capacity to be with the discomfort in the body is actually expanding more
Yeah,
and more
exactly. That's
and
what I mean
more.
by fitness. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
Oh,
fitness to be with
talk
whatever
about
it's
it.
arising. Yeah. Yeah, exactly what you just said. So sometimes we open up our capacity to feel, and then we can actually be more sensitive to emotions without a separate feeler, for example, because that separate feeler is what was getting in the way of you fully feeling that emotion. Right, right. And going back to what you said about how like you could need this particular remedy at this part of your life, this part of your journey, and then maybe the next week or the next day you need something completely different to shock your
Yep.
system, right? To create that new stimuli for you to adapt to so you can grow, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who was like really into Buddhism, and then he followed the siddhs like religiously. Then when
Mm-hmm.
I met him, I was like, "Hey, I think maybe the best thing to do right now for your path is maybe drink some alcohol and maybe smoke some weed."
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Let
but then he
loose. Let
actually took
loose.
that he let loose a bit. But then he took that maybe go see some hookers or something like that, have sex, maybe you need to watch more porn. But then he verified that into a new thing. He's like, oh, I just want to be like Frank. But then that became his new identity, and he got addicted to psychedelics. So that's why
Yeah.
you really got to be very,
Wow.
very careful of how, like, yeah, reality is always shapeshifting, right? So how the methods that you apply, and where your attention goes, where like your intention, and like how you
Mm-hmm.
contend with each situation, it's always
Mm-hmm.
shapeshifting too. Yeah, it's like almost like realization is always constantly a moving target. Yeah, and that's the beautiful part about it too. It's almost like the moment you define it, it already changed. The observer's
Yes.
effect, right? Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Even that word enlightenment, right? What it means to be enlightened in this particular part of my path or your path or somebody else's path can be completely different, like 5 years later or like 5 years ago. That's the paradigm. At the same time, there is realization, but then at the same
Yes.
time, there isn't. Anything goes. I can decide to. I've heard like some communicators will say things like, "If you decide to be enlightened right now, you are enlightened."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can see how that could very be beneficial maybe to some people in that moment, but it could be very problematic in another
To
context, in
others.
another person's life. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
But this is why I love that you talk about it, because I am completely allergic to this is how it is.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah.
the this is how it is syndrome, or it's either this or
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
nothing in between. And to me it's all of it. So when I hear someone say, oh, it's a gradual process, it's a journey, yes, yes it is. There is no process and no journey. Yes, you're
At the same,
right.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
you're
mean?
right too.
And it's like
Yeah, yeah.
and neither is true, and then we
It is
can
true.
literally go on and on and on and on. But the whole point, I think, is that you never arrive to any
Hmm.
ultimate view.
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the beauty of it, so then you
yeah.
explore, and you just let the life live itself, like just as it is, and you
Hmm.
don't have to like define it, because but again, I also completely understand that our minds are so wired to conceptual, to put everything to like
Yeah. Into
conceptual
boxes,
boxes,
yeah, categories. Yeah,
right? And it's like
totally.
this or it's
Yeah,
like
that's
that,
what the
right?
mind
So
does. Yeah.
that's what the mind does, and that's okay. It's like it's just good to see that, because
Yeah.
I'm allergic to like I've always been like that from an early age. So I would say, like, if I came across any spiritual teacher who would say this is how it is, or this is the only way, and then on top of everything else bash other teachers or traditions or something, I'd be out before he finished the sentence, because
Hmm.
this is just not right. This is just not my thing. So to me, that's a red flag straight away. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but like, I say to people, I would not hang in this kind of environment, or not to mention when there's like actively discouraging people to explore
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
teachers. And again, but even that is kind of like, for some people that works, and for some people this is not a good idea to explore too many things at the same time. So it's like,
Right.
but I suppose the point that we're trying to make is that like it's fluid. It's not
Yeah.
a fixed recipe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even what I said earlier about how you asked me, do I have any advice? I really couldn't come up with anything. But then
I
the moment
know.
I said, oh, you need a teacher, but some people, a teacher could get in the way. for some people. They might not be ready
Yeah.
for a certain teacher, or a certain teacher might mislead them. Find the right teacher, but what does that mean? The right teacher for who? During what
Right?
phase of your right? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Even as, you know, a challenging experience with a teacher, one would say, "Oh, that was a bad teacher for me." But actually there was so much teaching going on in that dynamic that
Exactly.
actually
Yeah.
there
It was
was
just
a whole lot
maybe
of
just getting.
teaching.
Yeah, there's a lot of teachings in that as well. Just like if you get kicked out of a community, that might be the best thing that's ever happened to your spiritual path. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I
I think
know.
it, yeah, yeah, that's why I say I like when you say curiosity or just this I call it interest with a
Mhm,
capital I. If you have interest for the sometimes I call it like Michael Jordan said for the love of the game, and for
mhm,
the love of life itself. Right. If you
mhm.
are curious about exploring life, which is no different from exploring mind, and that is the compass for you to go down this path virtuously. And when I say virtue, it's not just like, oh, you should do this or you should not do this. Virtue is really, like you said, curiosity. To be open. Yeah, yeah. The
Open.
interest
Yeah.
to explore life itself, which is completely open. That's so
Yeah.
contextual. Yeah.
I appreciate that you saying that you didn't know what to say when I asked about the advice. I have a tendency to ask for advice because I know because I know for the fact that so many people are so confused. And they will say, okay, this teacher says I should do this, and this teacher says
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that. And so, like, where do I go? And, you know, so that's why, you know, I asked you, knowing that there isn't really one like advice or like one size fits all, right? But
Actually,
and I
this entire
also
conversation has been an attempt to answer that question. Yeah. In a sense, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think we have maybe answered a little bit in a sense that to just show that there's just different paths and it really
Yeah.
depends and it's
Yeah.
contextual. You know, I haven't really had this dilemma, I think, because the path was sort of unfolding on itself and I was basically just listening to some teachers, and if something reson I never looked at the teacher as an is he right or is he wrong.
Hmm. Right. Right.
You know, is what he's saying true or not? I was just on feeling. If I sometimes would listen to a teacher that I wouldn't have a clue what he was saying, but I stayed
But then there would be
listening.
something. Yeah. There would be some kind of a transmission going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
Yeah.
it. So it was like breadcrumbs. So I was basically
Hmm.
following that
Signal.
whether
We
it
can call it
resonated or
signal.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like calling a signal. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can tell you, if there was a point when, if I listen to your videos at one point in my journey, I'll be like, what the fuck is he talking about? There would be absolutely no way that I would understand what you were saying. But that didn't make you a bad teacher, a wrong teacher, or you not telling the truth. I simply was at the point where I couldn't relate at all. I couldn't understand. So, do you see what I mean? Because there can be like a
Yeah.
tendency to, just because I don't understand the teacher or even don't like the teacher, doesn't mean he's wrong or he's a bad teacher, because he can be a great teacher for someone else,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Exactly the same as how I approach the way that I create content too. Because the things that I would say 5 years ago, sometimes I'll even make videos now to self-invalidate that. But then I'll point out to the fact that there is a limitation to what I was saying at that time. I didn't see it at the time. It worked for me because I'm just expressing what worked for me in that moment. It's not like what I said was wrong. It's just that it was contextual. But then I will make videos right now and say, oh, there's a limitation to Vipassana body scanning, for example. There's a limitation
Mm-hmm.
to self-inquiry. Before I was like, oh, this is actually the fastest method to realization is if you combine like do nothing meditation with Vipassana, throw in a little bit of self-inquiry. Yeah, that is true in that time. But then I can also see even the limitation of saying something like that. If you don't understand the views in which you're coming from example, what is the difference between, Vipassana and do nothing meditation? Like, what is the point of doing vipassana or the point of doing do nothing meditation? Yeah, so that's something that I didn't explore before. But then I would just be like, okay, everybody should do vipassana on one side of the extreme because that's like concentration work. On the other side of the extreme, you should like go and do the do nothing meditation. But even that could be explored. What is the
Yeah.
mechanism behind do nothing meditation and vipassana? And recently, I've been saying that the difference actually between these two techniques is actually not about the techniques themselves, but actually is about the maneuvers that you make. different techniques are just different maneuvers. If you look at life as an obstacle course, if you look at meditation training as also a maneuvering, a routing through an obstacle course. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you can maneuver through the obstacle course doing your formal sits, doing your meditation, you can also maneuver through the obstacle course in life. That's just an example of how I would approach different techniques and practices. Because, like I said, the
Mm-hmm.
modern mind is so good at just, cookie cutter, just really good at seeking out and really inclined to seek out cookie cutter programs. When I was into fitness, right, for example, people are always making videos about what is the fastest way to get a six pack? What is the fastest way to burn fat? But that is just the condition of the modern mind. Again, it has pros and cons. But when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
realization, that is actually what people are doing as well. And that's what I was doing before. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
here I even made a video, the fastest way to like realization, and I listed a bunch of techniques. Yeah,
But
yeah. But then,
Frank, that's the
yeah,
teaching in and of itself. I mean,
yeah, to constantly self-invalidate even what you say, what I myself say like 5 years ago. But then with the thing that's why I say internet is so tricky because the people who don't follow me throughout this entire journey, they would be very confused actually. But like, hey Frank, you said this 5 years ago. You said this like
mm-hmm.
last week, but now you're saying something else without seeing the whole pedagogy of my entire journey. That's why I used the word pedagogy in the beginning because the internet scene is have a pedagogy problem. If you want to study a certain tradition, you can't just like use the mindset of like let's just copy and paste
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a lot more nuanced than that, right? Right. Do you see that those
Yeah.
different techniques are just different maneuvers? For example, that's just another way for you to maybe recontextualize your reification to, put certain techniques on the pedestal or certain teacher, or certain teaching on the pedestal
Uh-huh.
while vilifying others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't put things or people on let's just destroy the pedestals
Yeah.
together. Let's just burn them all.
Yeah. That's why in Zen, they're like, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then
Yeah.
you can take that too
But then you
literally,
can
too quickly.
exactly.
You can just self. Oh, there's no teaching that ultimately works. I don't need to practice. Yeah. I mean, you could learn
Yeah.
something from this person in this part of your life. But then if you take that too literally, you might be missing out on a chance of working with someone that can really help you grow, for example.
I actually love the fact that all those videos of you are there. And actually, if someone wants, they can see the journey and they can see what you've been sharing as you went along. And I think that, this is something that to me is a teaching of itself, and seeing how this whole thing that is constantly changeable changes, and the
Yeah.
perspectives that you're always speaking from where you're at,
Yeah.
and so and again, and I think just by watching your evolution sort of the journey and everything, you kind of learn. To me, that's a teaching about like not holding to any view, like quite literally,
Hmm.
because a week later, a day later, and then we talk about something else in a completely different way. I bet our conversation would be a year from now will be very different. And maybe I
Yeah.
will even say, Frank,
Totally.
that thing that I told you a year ago, like that was total bullshit, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I could say
that,
the same. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like I said with these other teachers, where this is often the reason for attacking them when someone points out, well, you said that on that retreat, or last week you said this and now you're saying this, so you're contradicting, or something like that, and it's like invalidating their experience. But the reason why they're saying a different thing is because the experience has changed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even do you know Delson Armstrong? Have you heard of
That's
Delson
exactly
Armstrong?
who I mean. I exactly mean
Oh,
Delson when
yeah,
I
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
it.
Actually, yeah, yeah, because I think he came out and kind of renounced his attainments, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was a really clever move. He's like, I'm not gonna play your game anymore. But then people were, yeah, like you said, people would come up and then would attack him because he used to say this, right? And then there was the other side of the extreme. People would verify that, oh, no, I'm gonna renounce all my attainments, and that's a new thing. But
Yeah.
that's what it's so tricky to be in this business, like on the internet, right? Like being a Dharma communicator and all that. You can really fuck with your head actually, and then that's something I had to
Yeah, I
is
bet.
continue to work through actually. Yeah, this like I call it the YouTube karma, which I've
Mm-hmm.
been like putting videos online for the week that YouTube came out. I was already starting to upload videos because I've been making videos since I was like 14, 15 years old, before there was even internet. Yeah. So like this has been like part of my journey is like expressing myself and putting it out there for people to see. And then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the spirituality business, it could get really tricky to navigate through. And some people started doing that, uploading their journeys to the internet, talking about inside their own realization. And you see a lot of them actually kind of go insane.
Oh, really?
Sometimes people would just it's just some of the people would just kind of just all of a sudden just deleted all their videos, or they you can see them going through phases of like even uh, becoming very unstable in the mind. Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask you how this is affect, like, what are some of the things that you're dealing with by putting yourself out there?
I think exactly what we just talked about is like people will pin down what you said, and then they won't let you grow. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. And then you also can have a tendency to become the echo chamber of your own community. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of things. And another thing is people like the feeling of people putting you on a pedestal, right? It can feel very good, but at the same time it could definitely be an obstacle to your growth if you're too attached to the identity. And it's sometimes we're not even aware of these things because it just occurs, it just reinforce each other, right? You as a communicator in your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you put on things online out there, immediately it becomes a sort of a verification. It becomes solidified in a sense. Yeah, yeah. With even if you have the intention to not solidify it, you can
Yeah.
still run into the danger of people solidifying for you. But if people solidify for you because of this, again, this natural process of the self and others both being empty, but somehow codependent rise together, they're also solidifying you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then just working through that is also a practice in and of itself.
There are some people that ask questions, for example, in the comments or comment where there you can tell that even if there's a bit of like attitude in their question, they are actually curious and they really mean it. Like they was like, right? So then I feel like it's okay to engage then
Of course.
with those kinds
Yeah.
of people, right? And I've even engaged with some angry people,
Yeah.
a few times because I actually felt for them because I was like, mate, I know where you're at, like I get it,
Mhm.
like I get why you're angry, kind of a thing. But then there are some other comments that may be really like attacking or outright kind of hostile and or just not pleasant, right? To hear. So how do those comments still affect you? And do you how do you deal with those sorts of
They don't
things?
affect me nearly as much as before. I remember it before I used to make videos where I would, based on a particular comment, make a whole video like bashing that person. It was a video of me like holding up an X, and I was speaking to a certain community that I disagree with. This was years ago, but then uh, back then my entire life was revolved around like proving people wrong. But that was
Yeah.
the fuel for my own journey of I guess proving myself wrong in a sense. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
then, like I said, I'm glad I didn't get bogged down to a particular because there are people who just got stuck in that. That people there's this like YouTuber that just make videos bashing people who eat meat, for example, and then they spend 20 years they're still doing that. And that's the whole identity is to
It's almost
create an
like they're
identity.
20,
Yeah,
it's a 24/7 job. It's an actual
yeah,
job, I
yeah. It's a
think.
natural
Yeah.
job. Yeah, yeah. To
Mm-hmm.
defend a view. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then at the same time, it's like I don't shy away from these feelings nearly as much as before too. It's like if I get pissed off at a comment, I get pissed off at a comment. But like I said, now it's just there's no suffering in there. Yeah, I can get happy when somebody say, "Hey, you made a good video" or whatever. Someone gave me like a positive response. Or when my teammates they say, "Hey, Frank, you did a good job this week." During the discussion, I can feel great.
Yeah.
And then when
Yeah.
they say something negative, I can feel like a little sad, but that's all okay too. Yeah, completely
I'm
okay.
so glad
Yeah,
that you're saying this because, Frank, believe it or not, this is one of those things that people see you. And I know that for the fact that there are people who, like, see you a certain way, okay? And then
yeah,
they have these ideas that I bet Frank Yang doesn't get upset, or Frank Yang doesn't get annoyed with a comment, for example, or something like that. So I love to talk about this to you because this shows again the stuff that we were talking about, that no matter how profound the realization, no matter where at this journey, however many stages there are, I don't even care, still
Hmm.
human.
Yeah, I love what you said. Yeah, I'm actually part of my training right now is to feel frustrated, is to feel sad, is to fear the fear of other people. Yeah, yeah. Because like my previous phase, um, there was a phase when I really just didn't feel anything at all. Like I felt like a very subtle sense of bliss all the time, but then my teammates are like, "That's very limiting for you because like you're too content with life." But then my job right now is to work with people who are still suffering, right? But then in order for me to be effective, I have to feel, in a sense, what they're feeling without verifying that emotion myself, without the suffering that that emotion can have on you. But then you can definitely still consciously aggregate in a way where you feel sadness. Sometimes one of my practice right now is actually to listen to like sad breakup songs and then consciously aggregate in a way where I feel sad, and but then there's an underlying sense of like everything's still okay. That's a training in
Yeah,
of itself. Yeah, to
yeah.
like you said in your book, waking up to be human. It's like learning to be human again. And this kind of cycle is not just a one-off thing, right? It's not like okay, this phase you don't feel anything. The next phase you're gonna be human, you're gonna feel emotion, and that's just gonna be how you are for the rest of your life. There could be another
Yep.
phase where I go into that immovable sense of feeling like I'm invincible. I can't be affected by anything. All I feel is this very subtle sense of bliss. Right. There could be
Mm-hmm.
a phase like that in a future phase where that's the most appropriate response. Yeah, each phase and each cycle, all they kind of integrate together too. So the next time you go into this other phase, you will integrate the insights and experience you had in previous phases. That's how we just like accumulate our wisdoms and our, I guess, the nuances of our realization over time. But at the same time, there is no time too, right? At the same time, there's nothing to integrate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't actually even relate to the word integration at the moment because I'm
Yeah,
not
that
quite
is so. Yeah,
sure
integration
what
just doesn't
that
make sense
means.
too. But then
Yeah,
at the
it
same
really
time,
does
it's
something
also
to my
not true.
head.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also not true to say there's nothing to integrate either. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Because you're
I
constantly
suppose
integrating. Yeah, you're
you're
constantly
constantly,
recalibrating,
or
calibrating.
I would maybe
Yeah.
say that like the integration just happens as opposed
Mhm.
to there's someone sitting doing some kind of integrating is like the closest
Yeah.
thing I will go to. So absolutely, I'm glad that you said it because it doesn't mean at all
In a
that
sense,
like
reality is constantly integrating itself all the time.
constantly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
constantly. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. But so how did you find yourself in this practice with the emotions, and especially, in the relational one-on-one
Mhm.
context?
To be honest, I don't want to make that emotional thing to a thing, but then in a sense, I think I can be even more sensitive to emotions. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
right now that my default state is still a little bit like it's just everything is like completely fine,
Yeah.
and then I'm just
Yeah.
immovable. Nothing can touch me, so to speak. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm still in the process of kind of bringing the emotions back again and aggregating in a way where I can be more quote unquote human. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where I'm right now. I'm still figuring that out that part actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
but
still
I can
figuring
see
that
that
out.
because, the idea, again, I think one of the best bits of this journey for me was like the death of paradox, It's like
Yeah,
I
that's the
don't have,
paradox. Yeah,
yeah, like
there's no paradox
there is no
anymore. Yeah,
paradox. I don't,
yeah,
it's only paradoxical to the mind, but once that
yeah.
goes, it makes complete sense that you can
You
be
can feel and
completely
not feel at the same
unmovable.
time. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
literally feel all of it and be
But
unmovable at the
it be
same
immovable at the same
time.
time. I'm still like more on the immovable side where we are right now. But I'm
Yeah.
actually the difference is I'm more open to the idea that I can feel again, and that's okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that. No, I
yeah.
love
Yeah.
that
Especially the
you're
negative
on this.
emotions. Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah, yeah,
especially the negative
yeah, yeah.
emotions. Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I know. Which is why, I think I was telling Kyle that and Angela that my the title of my book is not at all sellable. Like it's disappointing from the get-go because it's like awakening to be human, as in like people are like, get me out of this humanness. I want to transcend my humanness, and I'm saying awakening to be human, but that's literally
Actually,
many,
it's a great title. No, it speaks to the paradox of non-paradox itself, because awakening and human, people just wouldn't associate that together. Just like people wouldn't
right?
associate the state of immovability with, feeling all kinds of emotions. People, yeah, it could be the perfect title for some people. They would just resonate. It's like, oh, there's something to this. Well, for other people, it's just like, this doesn't make any sense. How can you feel and not feel at the same time, both and neither? What does that mean?
You wrote this blog about the 10 fetters, and you wrote the kind of your own sort of take on it. And I was just like, how on earth did he did that so succinctly? Like I couldn't, because you really, to me, you captured the core
Mm,
essence of those last
patterns.
fetters.
Mm.
But I just, for me, as you know, you can tell I'm a talker. Like I don't know when to shut up. And so, I can never say anything in a nutshell. I'll just go on, and you like fall asleep, and like 5 hours later you'll be like, she's still talking. But one of my favorite things was when you go, that's it. And it's like, you're no different to cats and dogs, and like the ordinariness, the
Mhm.
ordinariness, just like being human, it's like, right. And I know that this sounds like such a disappointment, like such a bummer, when people look to transcend things. But this is why I called it awakening to be human, because it literally feels like you started as that, you end up as that. But also in many ways I feel like I'm just learning what that even means to be human, and it's such another
Yeah,
mystery, you know
exactly. That's a mystery in of itself. What does it mean to be human, right? I think that's a very good way to get people to drop the whole spiritual um, identity, or the whole fabrication of spirituality itself. I remember there's a teacher that I used to really like, and then he would put the stages of awakening as something like progressively becoming almost less and less spiritual, which was helpful in that sense. But then his last stage of awakening was something like becoming a hairless monkey, where you just like pooping on and urinating on a rock, and just eating. Yeah, but then at that moment I was like, holy shit, this is brilliant, because the stage before that was like Brahman,
yeah
like
yeah yeah
emptiness. And the stage before
yeah
that was like waking up to the heart, like oneness, or like compassion, or something like that. And then the stage before that was like, oh, the witness, right? But then I
yeah
was like, oh, this is brilliant. But the last stage is just being a monkey. But then I see that there's a tendency to even reify the physical world, for example. It's be like, okay, all I see is just physical reality, or like, oh, I'm just
mm,
like a tree or a squirrel. Yeah, but that could be problematic too. But then it was
yeah
very useful in that phase of development. Yeah.
yeah. But for me, the reason why it resonated, that specific bit about you're no different from cats and dogs, I think I was looking at it at the time from the perspective of like I just saw how much sense of specialness is attached
Yeah, yeah.
to
Oh, yeah,
spiritual
yeah.
progress, and there's just so much of this like sense of superiority. It really feels like this kind of like there's a whole like VIP club of attainment of some sort, and it's like give me the highest membership to it, and for the highest prize, and then I can,
Yeah, it's almost
be
like a
above
badge. It's like, oh,
everyone.
I have this. Not, does this person have an anti-realization or not? It's like there's a website dedicated
Yeah,
to that. It's like just
yeah.
criticizing teachers all about their view, which again, it's very useful during some
Mm-hmm.
portions of like many
Mm-hmm.
people's journey, myself included. But then you can definitely see the harm in that. I'm mostly talking about people who have a spiritual identity. They dress a
Right.
certain way. They speak a certain way. Like exactly what you just said about this. How do you call it? You non-dual your way into being, or something like that.
Non-dualizing,
You had it.
non-dualizing
Yeah,
away.
non-dualizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a certain sense. There's a certain role that you're playing,
Like
and
a
then
persona.
like a persona that you verify because of a certain insight that you're substantializing, for example. You're unconsciously maybe confusing other people because of it.
But I have a question. I'm not, just tell me, because if it's like too big of a question to explore now, then just tell me and we'll let that go. But because one of the things that I keep on hearing is that, once you had the realization, whichever one is called last realization, whatever, then you know other things, that's it. Like you can't have any other like weird experiences, you know, like
Oh, interesting.
energy related experiences, or I don't know how to, don't you call them siddhs, or there's, isn't that the term? And
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah, yeah. The cities, or
is
even like
that
jhanas or mystical
thing
experiences. Yeah, yeah.
right? What's your take on
I
that?
think looking back on my journey, there was a phase when I couldn't even produce jhanas anymore, and then
Mm-hmm.
I would even substantialize that to be like a some kind of a measuring stick. Yeah, like some
Mm-hmm.
teachers do that, and I did that for a while too. It's like if you still, I'll say things like there's no such thing as transmission or energy. Well, it was like if you're still experiencing jhanas, that means you're still dissolving something. Because jhanas, in another way to look at jhanas, is like the reason why you experience infinite space, for example, is because you haven't completely seen through to the illusion of space.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience of infinite space is
It makes
actually a
sense though. It makes
byproduct.
sense though.
Yeah, it does
Mm-hmm.
make sense. It does make sense. Yeah, it's a
Yep.
byproduct of whatever it is that you are still seeing through. It's a process of seeing through infinite space that gives you the experience of infinite space. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but then I think it all depends on like, what you want to, because I think after realization you have a lot more flexibility to incline your mind to certain states. So like I have been
Mm-hmm.
experiencing jhanas again, for instance, but it's very different from before. Yeah, it's almost like before the jhanas. This is just one very specific example. Before the jhanas would feel like the subject, the meditator, is merging with the object of meditation, right? There will be a split, and then jhana would be like the byproduct of you simultaneously merging with the object of your meditation and simultaneously seeing through to its illusions. But now,
Mm-hmm.
if I experience jhanas, it would be something that doesn't acquire a subject object merge. It was just almost like a pure jhana in of itself, a pure absorption in of itself, without the split between like, the subject and object. So I can still experience jhanas if I incline my mind to do so. Actually, yeah, yeah, that's just one specific example. In terms of like other things like cities or powers, I do think those things are real. And like for example, my mentor has ability to transmit uh, energy and to actually transmit even self emptiness view to people, and then he could read people's karma. He can just like sit down with you, and then he will have a very accurate description of your karmic trajectory, for example. And that's something that I have some experiences of, but I haven't
Mm-hmm.
completely developed that capacity. But where I am in my path is like whatever development that I'm undergoing, it's I'm not shying away from it. Neither am I grasping onto it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't have a grand goal as be like, okay, I want to have the ability to read minds or read people's karmas, and for example, but then I do have experiences that came much later, even after I've self-invalidated past lives, for example. It's difficult to
Yeah.
say, actually. Yeah, it's difficult to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really because I don't know enough about like jhanas. Like maybe I do, I just don't know because I'm not familiar with like the terminologies and like the mechanic. But when you talk about the mechanics of the experience, then I
Hmm.
understand. Even though I don't
Yeah.
understand maybe the terminology, but I find it quite interesting. The cities, I definitely see that being the case. And there's been stuff going on with me that if you told my academic self or like my non-woo self from a few years ago, I'd be like, are you nuts? Like,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and all that started happening after the realization.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so, but it's like you said, I think the way this stuff is experienced is so different
It's
because
different.
to me, when some of that stuff happens, it's no different to any other activity. It's no
Yeah.
different to
Yeah.
drinking a
Exactly.
cup of tea. It's no different
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
anything. I'm not in any state that I
Yeah.
have or go into.
Yeah.
There's none of that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that
Exactly.
it's not that the stuff doesn't happen. I think that stuff happens.
It's your relationship to it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that there's like no distinction, you know? So like I don't see these what that people would call like the phenomenal things, or other
Supernatural.
dimensions. I don't see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
difference. To me, there's no
yeah, yeah.
distinction. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just gonna
so
say that, like, in terms of like that, sometimes I describe it as like, yeah, you can access like higher dimensions, quote unquote, but the higher dimensions is all the dimensions are stacked onto a
yep,
singularity, and
yeah,
that singularity is nowhere to be found. That singularity you can say you're just the nature of mind. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But then the nature of
yeah,
mind is not like a container either. Yeah, even just saying it's a
exactly.
singularity, it's not like a little spot here that all the dimensions are like piled on top of each other. But that's just the best way I can describe it. It's like you can access different dimensions, but
Mm.
they are fundamentally, inherently no different than what I'm perceiving right now, which is,
Right,
just
exactly,
phenomena.
exactly
Yeah, it's
that.
just appearances. Just appearances. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Same thing with
yeah,
the
like
jhanas.
everything
Yeah.
else. Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
everything else. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like playing a video game.
exactly.
Like when you see through how the video game characters or the video game itself, the content of the video game is all empty of inherent existence. That is just appearances. It doesn't matter what kind of a game that you're playing. So that actually
Correct.
gives you more freedom and the flexibility to explore different aspects of experience or different
Mm,
aspects of reality. But this time
mm,
you're not clinging on to it. You're not like making it into a thing. You're not making something to the ultimate or like have this some of a clinging to that state as being like your state or like you feel
yeah.
special because you can access this or that
No,
state.
God, yeah,
Yeah.
no. There's no sense of you doing anything. It's like the stuff that comes through sometimes it does something to people. And the only thing that I know that something happens is because they tell me what they experience, but I'm not experiencing anything. I have no clue what's
Hmm.
happening,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
it,
That's
I'm
like
just
the
sit
yeah.
it's just like looking at you and sitting and talking to you. That's no different to what's happening in those moments. Like there's just
Yeah.
no there's zero distinction. There's no state or anything. So it wouldn't even, but I hear what you're saying that sometimes the people who may have had some kind of gifts of that sort, there may
Hmm.
be like a sense of like I do the healing and I do that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
special
Or I did a
something or
transmission.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or I
yeah,
did, or I did the transition, or something
yeah.
like that. So, I mean, it's to the point, Frank, that when some people who read the book talked about the book being transmission, and some of them in the farther, when I get to the stages and shift, they've had like they felt like energetic
Mm,
stuff going on just reading it. I was completely baffled because I was like,
mm.
really? Because I never like wrote this book with like, let me write a book that's going to transmit something, like it was
Yeah,
just, I was just writing a book, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
so it's extraordinary how this
Yeah,
stuff
since yeah, I
works.
can relate to that too. Some people say they watch when they watch my videos, they can actually tune into a transmission. But when I make videos, I'm just expressing my art. Yeah, yeah. But like
Yeah,
I'm not making videos in order to transmit something. But then
yeah,
in a
with an
sense,
agenda too. Yeah,
yeah, with an
yeah,
agenda, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then in a sense,
yeah.
it's like yeah, the process of creating these videos, even the process of you writing a book, or even the process of this conversation, is in itself a transmission.
Yeah,
Yeah, because like if you look at it, like there's transmissions everywhere. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah.
just like
It's
different
like,
different ways of tuning into different kinds of transmission. Yeah, even watching a movie or even when you go to a concert, right? When you go to a concert, when the entire club or entire audience is yoked towards that particular artist,
yeah,
that's the kind of a transmission right there. Yeah, I look at
totally.
like even DJs as like modern shamans, and for a lot of people in their younger generation, their first taste into, let's just say for lack of a better word, like unity or oneness is
Mm-hmm.
actually through like a
Mm-hmm.
rave.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
definitely transmissions going on there. Yeah, the transmissions going on when I talk to like when just two people who aren't into spirituality at all having a conversation, having sex, there's transmissions there too. Yeah, it just depends on
totally.
how you define transmissions and your relationship to these transmissions that ultimately
Yeah, it
matters.
doesn't have to have spiritual thing, which is it takes
Yep.
me a little bit, it takes me back to when you mentioned about the desire, because to me that's like literally
Mm.
creativity, life, like the life
It's
itself
desire,
wanting
right?
to
Itself
that,
is
that is
desire.
creating all the time, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's
it's not
desire.
like,
Yeah,
right? So that's desire, right? The
yeah,
life
yeah,
desiring itself to express it itself, the one way or another. But I
yeah.
suppose that, can you actually explain this to me? Because I'm not quite sure where the issue with the desire is, because from the point of view of like spiritual teaching.
The problem is people who don't see the nature of desire, they
Uh-huh.
would grasp onto desire, and they
Right.
would have an attachment towards certain kind of wanting. Like if you desire this, you want more of it, and that creates grasping and that creates craving, which leads to suffering. If you don't desire this thing,
Uh,
you want to, you have create an aversion towards that object of whatever it is that you don't want to desire. But now wanting to desire something is actually a desire in of itself. So the problem is not the desire, which is the life force of the universe, the creative energy or the
mm-hmm.
reproductive energy or whatever you want to call it. The problem is the
Mm-hmm.
desire on top of the desire. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the twisting on top of the twisting of phenomenons that's ultimately the problem. Because in a sense, everything is, like I said, in order for phenomenons to appear, there has to be this interplay between, contraction and expansion, between,
Yeah.
phenomena compounding and decompounding. Yeah, that's just the nature of phenomenons. Yeah. But there is the unconditioned, which is not apart from the condition itself. Yeah, yeah. The unconditioned is it's something that no conditions can touch, but at the same time, it's not apart from any of the conditions. Yeah, that's why you get into territory of like neither the same nor different, because if you say the nature of mind is the unborn and the deathless, if you say that's completely different from the conditions, from the afflictions, from the obscurations, then you are creating a split between the divine and the mundane. Then you can verify the unconditioned is something that's apart from appearances. But if you say the condition and the unconditioned or the manifested and the unmanifested are exactly identical, then
Mm.
there's nothing to realize, which is ultimately true too. But you can take that statement and explain it away with saying things like, "Oh yeah, nirvana is exactly the same as samsara. Therefore, I'm in nirvana." But then if you're saying that from the perspective or from the relative
Yes.
lens of samsara itself, then you're still suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when the very nuanced territory of like things are neither the same nor different, or the unconditioned is neither the same nor different from the condition. Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't think why in certain spiritual circles the desire is seen as an issue. So, because I was like, what's the problem, you know? But I think
Yeah.
I think what's changed, and I don't know if this is gonna make sense. It's like that before the realizations, the desires were exactly like they had weight. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
they had
yeah.
you literally had weight. So
There's
the
grasp. There's a
separate
lot of
little me
grasping.
that
Wants
wanted
to desire
the
something.
desire wanted to
Yeah.
fill something that I felt like I was lacking, you know, like fill some kind of hole. So therefore it was really important to get that desire, because if I didn't, then that would be crashing, right? In some kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
way. But what happened after realization is like the desires totally like come up all the time. I don't even like it's life. It's just living,
Yeah,
wanting to talk to Frank and wanting to go to Bali, you know, in December or something like that.
yeah. That's
But
awesome. Yeah,
if I don't get to talk to Frank, or I don't
that's
get to
fine
go to
too. Yeah.
Bali, the level there's no disappointment sort of. There may be a bit of like, ah, but like even the types of desires, there's not even like big desires, small desires. There's actually just like even that distinction collapsed. So the disappointment collapsed, you know, in a kind of like, because it doesn't matter, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
is that what you mean, like the distinction between the desire and
The
craving
desire
or
on top of desire.
grasping?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's
got it, got it.
people tend to verify having no desire is because a lot of times people get into the spiritual path in order to liberate suffering, and a lot of suffering is caused by desire, desire on
Right.
top of desire. Right, right. But then if they really truly understand the nature of phenomenon itself, or you see that the desire itself is not the problem at all, right? It's the second dart that we throw onto the first dart. The Buddhists like to talk about the two darts of experience. The first dart
Yeah,
is
I've
just
learned that
life's
recently about the
inevitable
dots.
contact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the life's inevitable contact. You constantly in contact, not even with reality, but you can say contact is contact in itself. But it's that second dart that you throw on top of the first dart, which is just pure contact, that is really the source of suffering.
I would love to just ask you about the stuff that you're up to right now. Like, what is the boot camp? I think it's called, if I got it right. What you guys are up to? Like, what do you love about this thing that you do?
I right now where I am right now, like my role in the boot camp is actually just to be more professional. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
In terms of like facilitating discussions in a more skillful way. Whereas before, I would just like
Wow.
expound, expound. But now, I actually, again, like I said earlier, I have to kind of fill into what other people are feeling in order to meet them where they're at. Yeah, and
Hmm.
yeah, like another thing that I love about the bootcamp, which ties back into the beginning of the conversation, where we have like scholarly studies, because I think that's one thing that's missing in a lot of people's path is this I guess the part of the refining your views. Even after realization, your view can continuously be refined. And one of the ways that we refine our views, not just yogically in terms of like practice, having experiential insights into or like wisdom into the nature of mind, nature of phenomenon, but it's actually to supplement that, we have like scholarly studies where we have like book club discussions. And like you mentioned earlier, but the Luminous Heart was one of the book
Hmm.
that we are really dissecting. And also the work of like Nagarjuna, because like I used to really love philosophy before, but then I kind of put philosophy like in the back seat when after I got into non-duality and spirituality. In fact, there was a phase when I look at all philosophical work as being bullshit, which is again is
Bullshit,
not
of
ultimately
course.
wrong. Yeah, yeah, but then at the
Yeah.
same time, there are certain yogic studies that you can do that you can yoke into the minds of, say, Nagarjuna just by reading his book. Just like people yoke their minds onto your book, right? Yeah, but then in terms of like view refinement, Nagarjuna is one of the things that I love about Nagarjuna is how precise he is with sort of how he would dismantle other people's views. He would say things like, okay,
Beautiful.
here's the four extremes that you should steer away from. The first extreme is, a craving or attachment to existence, to like being. That's more like the eternalistic kind of view, or like everything's one, or everything is God, or like just like kind of reduce everything to just like one substance. Yeah, and then the other side of that is the second extreme is attachment or identification, craving for non-being. That you can look at that as like we talked about earlier. You can reify emptiness, or like reify no self, or like reify nothingness and become
Hmm.
nihilistic, or have this like a nihilistic view. We just want to constantly dissolve the last speck of the self, or constantly trying to eliminate all desire, all conditionings. And the third
Yep.
extreme is both being and non-being, both existence and non-existence, because you can see through both of these views, and you can actually still be holding on to the fact that, oh, everything's both. And the fourth extreme is neither existence nor non-existence. So what are you gonna what's left after that? It is completely inconceivable, right? That's just the nature of reality, is being completely outside of concept.
Completely
But then,
inconceivable.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, but then
Yeah.
all these four extremes can still be included. That's the beauty of it.
Yep.
You can still
Yep.
hold the oneness view. If I talk to a spiritual friend who's like really into like the oneness view, I have no problem with saying everything's one. Yeah, yeah. But then I can also at the same time point out to the limitation of that view. But while
Yeah.
simultaneously saying, hey, there's nothing wrong with everything is one, right? So that's what I love. Another thing I love about the book camp is like we have this like philosophical studies, but it's not just any philosophy. It's what I call yogic philosophy. It's a kind of a
Hmm.
dialectics that I just give you an example of like the four extremes, and how you continuously see through the limitation of concepts, using concepts to self-invalidate itself. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So you actually have to like read it in not just conceptually, but non-conceptually. You kind of have to like read these books with your entire being. Like you have to
Yeah.
like quote unquote read it with your third eye. If I want to
Live
explain
the
this to
book. Live the
a
book.
spiritual
Yeah.
conference, yeah, 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 yeah. Even though the way that you read it, it's like okay, we actually need both. We need both the practice of meditation on the cushion, and we need some kind of scholarly studies. Because like, if you look at a lot of like these lamas, they started going to school for these things like when they're like 4 years
Yeah.
old too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like their whole entire career, right? Yeah, that's why it's also at the same time like so the capacities of some of these lamas, it's just not something that people uh have an idea about, which I myself don't have the most like encompassing idea of like what are some of the stuff, the capacity these people have even after there was, according to them, even like self-emptiness realization is actually just the starting condition for you to develop other capacities that allow them to be more effective in helping sentient beings, for example. But even with that said, like I actually think I'll be completely fine even without the bootcamp too.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
I hear
I love what
you.
I'm doing, but like I don't have any grand goal of like, oh, I have to continuously refine my views, or like I have to develop this season power, so so I can transmit this teaching to other people. Yeah, I don't have
Yeah,
that either. But
yeah,
at the same time, I'm open to it. That's actually another thing that I love about it. It's like I'm not attached to it, but at the same time, like I'm like totally like involved with it. Yeah, simultaneously.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's what we were talking about. It's like the both
yeah, yeah.
coexist. Like it's just there's no paradox or issue here, you know. But I want to just mention something else. I really enjoyed the video you did about discipline.
Oh, which one?
It was maybe the 2 months ago or 3 months ago.
Oh yeah, I
But
think it's called
it's one of
realization fitness. Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
think it
And
was
that's
that,
another thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
sitting and I was like, that's right, that's right. I was like, I was
Hmm.
like, because I can again see how the um when people especially hear about no doer or start exploring
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this thing,
That's another
the
thing I
idea
want
that
to point out.
who
Yeah,
is getting discipline and like who is
yeah, yeah.
masterful and the whole skill stuff. And I can tell you, and I want to say it to these people, I am Sagittarius rising by my personality, for anyone who's like into astrology. So for me, my most of my life the word discipline was like kill me now, okay? Like to me it was like my freedom is gone. Like discipline meant prison, you know. Discipline meant I can't go with the flow, I can't just go whatever I want,
That's
whatever the
completely not
hell I
true. Yeah,
want,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
oh my god, the idea of discipline, the idea of routines, of having like organized day and time, oh my god, just like take me out of here. Like this, it was just my idea of nightmare, you know, to live
Mm.
like that. Like counting macros, for example, just again, just forget about it, you know. um After realization, with all the shifts, the no doers, the all the bits, you know, that when I have never been, to me discipline is freedom. To me it's
Discipline is
like
complete freedom. Yeah, yeah.
it's amazing. It's like I haven't decided to become disciplined. I haven't decided to start creating routines. They just started. I just
Mhm.
found myself, this human me, just all of a sudden just planning things and loving routines and loving and counting macros and
Oh,
not
yeah. Me too.
quitting
Yeah.
training no matter how I feel in the morning. I can be like, I don't want to train, whatever, I can't be bothered. And then on my way to training.
Message in the boot camp is that is to
Is it?
master life. Yeah, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
that's exactly what the next thing I was gonna say is like what I love about it is that we don't shy away from exertion and discipline,
Mm.
because like I said, using an example of fitness, for example, yeah, physical fitness. Yeah, it's like for one of those athletes that practice like parkour where they just like flip and like jump from
Yeah.
building to building in a very
Yeah.
free flowing kind of way. They have to be extremely disciplined in their diet, in their their workout programs, in order to be free like that. Same with like jazz musicians. In order for a jazz musician to flow and be spontaneous, it actually takes years of discipline work. And it's still a discipline for them to, continue the training to be ever increasingly more flexible or more spontaneous by being even more disciplined.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then so a lot of the time is which is no different than refining your views because why do we shy away from it? Because we have this view, especially in a non-dual community, as equating freedom with not doing anything or like with the lack of structure. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a view in and of itself. Actually, if you maybe, I think that is very something very important. I also want people to hear. So maybe you can put the link of that video that in the description,
About
the
the
one about this.
discipline.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sure,
So
of
people,
course.
yeah, because I
Yeah,
actually
of
think
course.
this topic can be another podcast in and of itself.
It
Yeah,
totally
yeah. To
can
kind
be
of
because I
can like deconstruct the myth of like routine and discipline. Because yesterday, that's another thing I love about the bootcamp is like we have discussion right after the meditation, so we have instant feedback on like what we experience in meditation, and we troubleshoot and we provide people a recommendation
mhm.
for what kind of routings and what kind of maneuvers I make. And
Yeah.
yesterday during the discussion, we were actually talking about the joy of a 9 to 5. Yeah, because I just started this 9 to 5 thing by doing this boot camp. Like I said in the beginning of the call, it's almost like a 9 to 5 to me. Like before, I'm just doing whatever the fuck that I want. Yeah, for like
Yeah.
the last like 15 years, right? I never had
Yeah.
like a real quote unquote real job. But then now it's just like, oh, actually there is a joy in routines and looking forward to the
Totally.
weekends because you work hard
Yeah.
during the weekends. But this is the flipping the flipping the karma of thinking that 9 to 5 is bad. But I can understand
Yeah.
where people are coming from if they're doing a 9 to 5 that they don't like, for example.
Yeah.
But then it's almost like you can actually just like you can you rest within your afflictions, you rest within your conditionings, and through with and
Yeah.
as your conditionings you realize the unconditioned. So even if you hate your job 9 to 5, you can actually flip that karma by relating to
Yeah.
it differently. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. There's fluidity in like the fluidity is in those routines. In it's not
It's in the
separate,
structure.
right?
Yeah, it's
And
not separate at
also
all. Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
separate at
Yeah.
all. And also I think, there's another thing. I went for a walk yesterday and I thought, wow, I just realized that energy of commitment to me is just pure life force. Like there is
Yeah.
an
So
actual
beautiful. Yeah.
energetic shift when you decide, which is again, I know the people who like are into
Yeah,
like
it's
no
a premise,
doer now, they
but
will
yeah,
see it as a
exactly.
paradox, but actually
But
it
it's not.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter
Yeah.
because there's no distinction. It doesn't matter what I mean. It's
Yeah.
happening either way. When that moment of commitment happens, it's almost like the whole fucking universe, like just sort of the
Mm,
energy just starts kind of like building up, and there's a
yeah.
momentum that you really
This
feel like
momentum, the
you're being
trajectory. Yeah.
carried. You're being
Yeah.
carried
Yeah.
as opposed to afford like doing the effort, or even the effort doesn't feel like effort because you're being carried by that pure, that human
Yeah,
that you are. It's
the
just
pure
it's hard
desire
to
of the
explain,
universe. Yeah,
but there is just
I know exactly
exactly
what you're
there's
talking
like
about because people just don't tend to think of awakening or realization or the path this way, especially in
yeah.
the modern non-dual circles. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So what you
yeah,
just said, I can relate 100%. That's why I brought up the discussion yesterday we had about like the joy of 9 to 5 because there's a synchronicity that we're actually talking about this right now. We just had the discussion yesterday when I just realized, holy shit, I'm actually kind of working a 9 to 5 job and I fucking love it because I find that
right?
that it's completely free to be within in that structure where most people would find that to be
The
repulsive.
simplicity of the simplest human acts, like even making a coffee a certain way
Or
in the
making your
morning,
bed. I
or
just mowed the lawn
making,
today. So, yeah, I started mowing lawns in a straight line because when I went to my mentor's house, he was like, Frank, you don't at this point you don't need any more Dharma training. You need
yeah,
life training. So I was like learning how to
yeah,
put the dishes away in a particular kind of way,
yes, yes,
and then like
yes,
mowing the lawn in a straight line because like I said in the beginning, going full circle, it's like I tend to have this like Tasmanian devil energy where I just destroys the field. And then when I mow the
yeah.
lawn, when my mentor told me to mow the lawn, I was like doing it like this. And he was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's like, you have to go in a straight line. It's like it actually takes a surgeon for me to go in a straight line. But at the same time, because of the freedom of the realization, going in a straight line actually feels wonderful.
It's
So
just
that's the training that I
unbelievable.
need to go to the straight line. But for another person who is completely rigid their entire life, they need to be more like chaotic, right? And another example of
Exactly.
like the relationship with the remedies and what the remedy is trying to cure is completely flexible and relative. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like now you're just more aware exactly how your mind is aggregating and how like you get to create your own structure, your own geometry of reality. So like I work hard
Hmm.
on the weekdays, I'm being professional, but on the weekends I'm completely conscious of the fact that I'm gonna go out and just get drunk with my
Yeah.
girlfriend and we're gonna have sex all
Yeah.
night long. But before
Yeah.
it was just like I could do that every single day, but then
Yeah.
you became kind of desensitized to that, right? If you are just
Yeah.
doing whatever the fuck you want every day, it's like total freedom actually becomes a limitation.
When I look at it, I actually don't think it's a freedom at all. That freedom that you've just mentioned is no freedom at all.
Yeah, it's not freedom model. Yeah, yeah,
It's actually
exactly.
procrastination. It's actually a lot of fears, a lot of protective
Mm.
mechanisms, a lot of stuff
Yeah,
playing out. It's no freedom at all. And you know that because you
exactly.
feel
Yeah.
stuck,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
You
So
feel
it's like,
because like I said in the beginning earlier, is that can come from the view of everything is spontaneous, everything is
yeah,
flow.
yeah, yeah,
But then actually
exactly.
you're just bypassing. Yeah, you just bypassing the fact that maybe you're not disciplined, you're lazy, you're not getting anything done. I think we're just both very excited about this topic, and then we're
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
trying to articulate it simultaneously because like it's something that's actually maybe from the way you're speaking, it's something that you're just discovering right now, and for me as well. So it's like
Mm.
I'm actually like very new to whatever this is it is that we're discussing right now. It's
Yeah.
something
And
like
so
that
it's
really
yeah,
new
so
to
it's
me.
really cool. It's a yeah,
Yeah, I'm just we're
I
just
was
both trying
very
to sketch out the ideas. Yeah, because I haven't really talked about this with anyone in podcasts before. Yeah. So when you
yeah,
ask
that's
like, what do you love about it? This is it, actually. Yeah, what I love about
I think
the
we're definitely very different people, but I think we just like I love the fact that you get excited. Actually, just that alone that you get excited about things to me it's such a good news because sometimes when I listen to certain teachers and people, and it's not criticism at all because some people's personalities are simply more calm and kind of more subdued, so to speak, and there's nothing wrong with that. I happen to not be subdued and quiet,
Hmm.
and and you also, when I get excited, because to me enthusiasm is literally also the life force,
Yeah, yeah.
it's actual life
Interest, yeah.
force. and
Curiosity.
um and so it comes up, and especially if I get to meet someone with whom I can talk about it and they get what I'm saying and they can even help me kind of articulate it because I'm struggling to articulate it, and that then that's like I feel like a bit like a kid, so yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'm actually starting a series of interviews. So what I did with the mentors in our bootcamp, that's actually one of the instructions from my mentor is like, Frank, you've been interviewed like for the last like 10 years or whatever. People are always interviewing you. In order to like flip that karma, now you have to go interview other people. So maybe next time I can interview you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we
Yeah.
both like the fact that it's not so much an interview as more like just a chat,
And
Thank
I actually
you.
share pages of your book on my social media, and a lot of people really liked it. Yeah,
Thank you
because I've
so
been
much for
posting,
that.
yeah, I've been posting a lot of what we learned in the boot camp. A lot of it's like very specific, like lineages and Buddha Dharma. If you talk to Takali, maybe he can tell you a little bit about it. But then some people just don't resonate with it unless they're like in the boot camp or unless like they have this pedagogy going on. But then when I
Yeah,
posted your stuff, people like really resonate with it because like I think it speaks
that's
to like
amazing.
most humans actually because the title
Yeah.
of the book is for the humans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's meant
yeah.
to
So it's
speak to all
to
humans,
everybody. Yeah,
not
yeah.
yeah,
But then it's like part of my job right now to like continue this line of I guess creativity, communication, content creating. Even just by like accepting an interview with you, it's like okay, now there's more content to do. So this is like part
yeah.
of the discipline actually.
Part of the discipline. Yeah, no, I totally
For
get
some
it.
people,
I
part of the
totally get
discipline
it.
is not go on Instagram. For me, part of the discipline is to continue to post on social media consistently in order to,
Mm-hmm.
market our boot camp or even like, spread the word. But then that only comes, the freedom of that again only comes from the fact that you're not nearly as much attached to, constantly trying to post and trying to like spread the message because there was a phase
Exactly.
where that can become an addiction. Same with my relationship with fitness, actually, exactly the same as my relationship with like content creating. It's like you can live with it or you can live without it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I still find the joy. That's the difference. Like I still find the joy in going to the gym, but then now that discipline has become a freedom, and vice versa. It's the freedom from
Yeah.
discipline that gives you, that allows you to find freedom within discipline, in a sense. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly,
So like
exactly. The freedom within
so it
discipline. I
collapses.
totally
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Freedom and discipline. But then in order to do that, really, you have to kind of let go of discipline too at the same time. But by
Yeah.
letting go, you're actually more immersed. That's
Yeah,
the
but
paradox.
but this is
It's
why it's
hard
so
for
hard
people
to
to.
explain that I
Yeah,
don't it's not
yeah,
like I
yeah.
woke up one day and decided, oh, from today
Yep,
I'm going to be disciplined. The discipline just
yep,
started emerging. It just started
yeah,
happening. And the same with like even fitness. Like now I'm not doing fitness because I want to look like top model. I'm doing it purely because I want to treat this physical body as best as I can,
yep.
and I want to see what it's capable of. And so it's like a challenge,
Hmm.
And I love that because I don't want to buy into that like at certain age this is how far you can go with this. I'm like, no, I'm gonna see where I can go and look even be more stronger and more fit than I was in my, 20s or something. Like, why not, But it's like it's pure it's almost like for the pure love of exploration of what this
That's
body
what I
can
said in the
do,
beginning for love of
you
the game.
know?
Yeah, yeah. for the love
Yeah,
of the
for
game.
the
That's
love
how
of the
Michael Jordan
game.
explains his relationship to basketball. Yeah, he just loves
Yeah.
the game. Yeah, but the winning is part of it. But that's almost like the, I don't know what his mindset is, but to me, all the progress that I'm making right now, even the money that I'm making from like teaching the boot camp, or
Mm-hmm.
the fact that building on my brain again, it's all byproducts. I actually
Yeah.
enjoy just doing it for itself, but within that doing it for itself, there is still discipline to exert, but it's
Yeah.
completely also, I don't want to even want to say effortless because it
Yeah.
can take effort. It's beyond
Yeah.
effort and effortlessness. Sometimes it takes some
Is.
effort, sometimes it takes decision, sometimes it takes complete letting go. Sometimes it's a combination of both or neither. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for the
But in
lack
the
of the,
moment, you don't even think in those terms,
you
whether
don't
it's
think
effort or
you don't think
effortless.
in
It
these
just
tips at
doesn't
all.
matter.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
Frank, do you do for anyone interested? Because obviously you're doing the bootcamp, so that's like 9 to 5 job from what you were
I
saying. But
do
do you still
one-on-one coaching as well.
you still do
Yeah.
one-on-one? Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, for anyone who's never heard of Frank, I'd be surprised anyone in my space if they didn't hear from you. So I'll leave all the links in case anyone is interested in exploring the one-on-ones or the bootcamp. And yeah, I hope to see you soon again.
That
Thank
was
you,
really fun.
Frank.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I'll see you soon.